Good morning.
Morning, Matt.
Okay, it says it's being live streamed. Should be good.
It says it on, yeah, it says it on Zoom on that.
This screen isn't. Oh, I'm gonna try this. There we are. Okay. We are. Oh, do we have quorum too?
Yes, we do, but I think there's more people in the waiting room.
That's enough. We don't need any more. Kidding.
Krista, we do have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good. Well, let's go ahead and get started with the meeting then. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to visit for a few minutes on this as a part of this Utopia board meeting. So well, let's jump right into the agenda. The first item is consideration of a set of minutes or approval of a set of minutes from the February 12th, 2024 meeting. Are there any discussions regarding those minutes or any proposed additions or deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Yeah, this is Doug Alex. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 12th, 2024.
Thank you, Doug. Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Adam from Linden.
Okay, thank you. Adam, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented for the February 12th, 2024 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with a nay? Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item is consideration of a resolution at 2401 regarding the adoption of a tentative budget for fiscal year 2025 and also setting the time and place for a public hearing regarding the adoption of that budget. So Jason, I believe you have some background to present on that.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let me share my screen. Here we go. I'm happy to have the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget for Utopia. To start off, just wanted to start off looking at the fiscal year 2024 projected year end, where we project in the year. If you look at our residential transport number right there, that's I've just done a basic calculation based off February results to say if we annualize those results, where will they be? And for residential transport, it shows that we're going to be a little low, but I think we're going to come in fairly close to budget with some growth that we're still seeing come through between March, April, May, and June. We should be pretty close on that. Other than that, on revenues, you'll notice there was a sale of assets for $850,000 that's not happening in fiscal year 2024. That's because it happened in June of 2023, and that was related to Bountiful Network. We sold some assets to them when we did that project. But that's a timing issue. We're seeing where the cash came in earlier than we thought it would. Other than that, if you look at expenses, salaries and benefits were running behind where we have budgeted. That's because of position openings and us hiring a little bit slower than we thought we would for some positions. Did want to talk a little bit, if you go to repair and maintenance down below, they're running a little bit faster than we expected. And we are seeing more repairs and maintenance this year than we had seen last year. And part of that is because we have more network that we're looking at. And part of that is also just because we're seeing so much construction this year, and the construction seems to be hitting our lines in not good ways all the time. We try to recover as much of that as we can. We do have efforts in recovery, but obviously not all of that is available for recovery all the time. Moving on to the 2025 budget. If you look at the revenues and where we have those projected. UIA related payments are projected to go up by $966,000 next year for fiscal year 2025 over fiscal year 2024. That's just based off UIA's growth and the return that Utopia gets based off of what they do for UIA. Residential transport numbers, those are actually customers of Utopia that we're looking at here. That's projected to go up by $515,000, which is a good number. About half of that is related to Bountiful and what we expect to happen in Bountiful in the next year. We do expect customers to be coming on. The other significant thing that we do have in there that we do need to talk a little bit about is we are projecting here a $4 per customer per month increase on most of our products that we're doing. This would affect most of the customers if this happens. This is more UIA related, but it does affect some Utopia customers also. What we're looking at here, this may or may not happen depending on some various things that we're trying to take a look at. If it doesn't, if we don't do the $4 per month increase, it would be probably because we're looking at trying to get a new bond rating from a new bond rating agency. We did find out that one of the other bond rating agencies rated a similar type bond to ours. And so we're thinking if they can do that other bond, they can also do ours. And we're trying to initiate those talks. If we get a rating from another agency, we will be able to get bond insurance and free up a lot of debt service reserve funds that we have in just sitting in trust accounts right now. And those would be, we would be able to use those for growth of the network in the future. If we don't get that rating though, we think this $4 is likely that up to $4 per month would be a necessary increase. And this would be to cover some of the inflationary costs that we've seen. And also because our current bond rating agency is very focused on a ratio that we have that is our revenue compared to our debt less our cash on hand. They're very, very much focused on this. And to hit, we know pretty much where we're going to need to be on this ratio to go out for another bond this year. And we believe that a $4 increase would put us where we need to be for this rating to get more funding. And we would need that fund. We do need some funding to cover the growth that we're seeing inside our existing cities in the next year. Some other questions that were asked in the UIA meeting, we did have questions. When was the last time that we did a rate increase? And it was over 10 years ago that we would be talking about that we did the last rate increase. If you take the total fiber lease fee and the total amount of customers paying for both the fiber lease fee and their service provider fee, this would be about a 7.3% increase if it goes through at $4 per month. Any questions or comments on that?
So let me just put a little perspective. So our preferred option is not what's been budgeted. Our preferred option is that we get that bond insurance, free up the reserve funds, and then we don't need to do the increase. But we feel like we needed to budget with the situation that doesn't happen to be conservative. So assuming that we're not able to get that bond insurance in place, we would need to then do the rate increase in order to be in the right place for what they look at as a VADS ratio to be able to get the next bond to fund things for installations. And just, again, it's not a huge amount, but it's enough to support our growth of customers, which just costs us a lot of money, but it's a good problem to have because they create new revenues. So that we've budgeted basically that plan B to be conservative, but we'll know probably in the next couple of months whether that plan A is going to be feasible or not. And then as far as the amount of the rate increase, we've assumed a $4 rate increase. Again, in a couple of months will be closer to where we would need to go out for a new bond, or at least basically establish the, our revenues and everything with the bond rating agencies to know where we're at. And so it could be $3, could be 3.5, but $4 definitely gets us where we would need to be. As far as whether that is sustainable or appropriate, based on just inflation and where competitors have been, we're still way below where competitors would be, and not even keeping up with inflation. But still, we're always trying to balance several things of, our ability to pay the dividends to the cities, trying to keep the cost of service low, trying to be competitive, but providing benefit to our residents. We don't want them to have to pay higher rates for services. And so with all of those things that we're kind of balancing, this seemed to be, our ability to finance the growth of new customers is critical. And $4 would get us where we need to be for that, while not harming us or preventing us from being able to issue a dividend. If we didn't do a dividend, that'd solve it, but that's a problem. So we've definitely been the message from the cities that we want to be able to continue to make progress on paying towards the original Utopia bonds. We've budgeted for continuing that. And so this is kind of where we're at. Is plan A is we don't have this issue. Plan B is to raise our rates by about $4. And whether the service providers mark that up or pass it through or absorb it, we don't know. It's probably safe to say that pass through is the most likely situation, which would just take, our low entry cost of service is about $60 right now. And so that would take it to 64, which is still very competitive in the industry. So we have good path forward. Obviously we love option A, but we can't count on that yet. So we have budgeted for plan B, which would include a rate increase.
So Roger or Jason, maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, so I apologize, but what would be the timing of that when we would have the information to determine whether we needed to do the rate increase or not? Is that within
we're hoping to know this. We're hoping to know whether or not we need to do it sometime this summer. And we would probably be looking at, I'm going to say early fall is the most likely time, but it could be late fall or maybe early summer when we would probably be looking at bonding. So the rate increase, when we know if we're going to be able to get a new debt rating or not, probably sometime this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, could I ask you a quick question? This is Bob and Perry.
Yeah.
And forgive my naivety here, but and I don't mean to get us on a tangent and take too long on all the details, but just generally, what has been Utopia's past history with rate increases? When was the last rate increase? How much was it? A little bit of information that way for me.
Bob, really what I know is it's been over 10 years since we've done a rate increase. And I didn't look too much closer to that. If you'd like, I can find that information and get it to you exactly what we did whenever it was. Roger, maybe you have a better recollection, but it's been a very long time since we've done a rate increase.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated because we have product changes that in a way are a rate increase, in the sense that we take gigabit service that, it used to be $200 for gigabit, and now it's like $65, $70 or so, depending on which provider you pick. So we have somewhat frequent, like every few years, there's an adjustment of, here's the price for a given service, and we often will shift the tier of service that you can get for that. But to just say we're not making a change to the tier of service, but just applying an increase to that, it's been, at least a 10, probably, I think it's been 12 years actually is when we did it last. So we've avoided that and really just had it included in a update of what the service tiers and pricing for those tiers were. We are actually, we haven't got to that yet, but we are introducing additional tiers and benefits, but they don't affect our most common products of 250 meg and gig. But we're introducing a 2.5 gig tier and a lower price for 10 gig. We don't have many customers on 10 gigs, so it doesn't hurt us much to lower the price of that, but we actually expect a lot of people to be picking the 2 gig tier. in the future. So that'll help our revenues. But there's no benefit to people of raising the rate on the 250 meg and gig tiers, which are the most common right now. Other than it's just, inflationary. If you were to say what's the cost, what's the price of $1 and inflation adjustment over time, we are still more affordable for those tiers today than we were several years back. And if you just consider this as an inflationary adjustment, we're still providing a better value, service, and speed for the dollar. Yet we're still competitive, right? We look at what others have done in those types of tiers of a gigabit service, and we've seen them raise their rates far more than we have. And that's something we're trying to balance. We would like to offer lower service and be more competitive, and we have been actually over time. We continue to add more customers and increase take rates over all of other options in all of our cities. But it's a delicate balance. As I said, we could offer lower cost if we didn't do other things like invest in our growth or pay dividends, and improve our debt position. But that's important to us. And so we also want to not, be available for the lower income households. We worry about the impact of raising rates. So this is, a $4 increase we still feel is a great place to be. Again, that's not our preferred option. Our preferred option is to keep pricing where it is and to, get that bond insurance and free up the funds so we don't have to get this next bond. But this is a conservative approach in the case that we can't get that. We'd still have a really good option to put the rate increase and stay competitive.
Roger, this is Doug's. So is the approval of a rate increase a UIA responsibility or a Utopia board responsibility?
So we do not do rate increases with our boards, or at least we have not in the past. We've kept that in the category of administrative decisions for what our rates are, and we don't change our rates and product tiers for residential very often. Business changes more often, almost annually. So we do an internal evaluation of competitive pressures and all of that to determine what rates are and adjust those and have a process for communicating and coordinating with our service providers. So we do include assumptions of rates that go into our budgets. So you kind of say, well, somewhat indirectly, we approve changes by approving a budget, but we haven't done formal board action related to our rates.
So it's my understanding the interlocal entities have the same requirements as municipal entities when it comes to rate increases, but I don't know for sure. But could you have
different?
Could you have somebody take a look at that? Just look at this law and make sure that we're following the process correctly.
Yeah, we'll have Nicole do a review of that. I think the rationale for our approach in the past has been that this isn't a utility. This is an optional service, and there's all the different tiers and the whole wholesale versus retail, and the structure of this, at least from what I recall, I don't have the legal analysis in front of me, but was that our structure doesn't require or treat our rates the same as what a utility would. We're not considered a utility or a utility service with the rules for the rates being the same as what they would be for other types of utilities. But we will do a review on that. So
thanks.
Be a good idea either way.
This is Robin from Centerville. I'm sorry, I got kicked off and then I'm back on again. So my question may be back a ways. But my question is, you're talking about the new bond and then you're talking about bond insurance. So are we looking at taking out a new bond? And if so, how much are we looking at?
So go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say, we are looking at taking out a new bond. And the new bond, and it's when I say we, it's not Utopia, it's UIA. So this would be a UIA issue mainly. but they're looking at issuing a bond with net proceeds of $15 million, with 10 million to be spent in fiscal year 2025 and 5 million to be spent in fiscal year 2026. That's kind of preliminarily what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jason, this is DJ from Brigham City. What is it the UIA is looking to use those bonds for? Is it existing cities or?
It's existing cities very much primarily. We're looking at doing $14 million capital projects. Right now, if you look at our annual spend inside of existing partner cities and Utopia cities, so all the cities we have relationships with, we're spending about $12 million a year in there. And part of that is we're still seeing significant customer growth inside of our existing cities, which is fantastic. And part of it is our existing cities are growing, and every time they grow, we go make sure it goes to the new neighborhoods and it's available everywhere in the cities.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it'd be fair to say there's some outside of the cities, but the only time we build things, outside of a city, in these other cities is if there's a good business reason for it, right? Like we have a lot of partnerships with UETN, for example, for school connections. The state of Utah uses us. The counties will use us. So if we have, we're not putting ourselves out there to lose money on any of those. These are partnerships where we have backbone or facilities that could be used, say surplus capacity, right? That we can piggyback off from to get additional customers. There's often a cost, and it's not free to us to build a lateral off of our connections to connect a facility. So it costs us money to do those, but the revenue is fantastic, and we have no obligation to do them. So we're able to kind of do them only as it's of benefit to us. But we do need to budget some money for that. But the lion's share of this contemplated bond would be for in-city connections and expansion as those cities grow.
So Roger, when you say in city, are you talking specifically about the original cities that were part of Utopia, or are you talking about cities that come on new?
All cities where we have a fiber to the home project or citywide build out. So that's the member cities and as well as what we'd call partner cities. Again, we have obligations to expand as those cities expand, but those are highly profitable expansions. As a new development is built, this isn't the same as what we typically would do, where we go in there and directionally drill and have the fully loaded cost of building it. New development is very profitable to us, whether it's a member or partner city, because we benefit from open trenches as the developments go in. So our cost per household is especially low as we build those, and then we get the same revenues. So in the whole grand scheme of things, those expansions are very profitable to us, but the timing of it is a little tricky because we have to spend that money, and it may take a year or two before developments are completed and homes are built and revenues start showing up. So financially for us, they're fantastic from a long-term perspective, but in the short term, it's beneficial to use some debt financing to pay for those and get them in as the cities are built.
So would you say, this is just a thought that just cropped to my head as you were talking, but would you say that if you were to slow down bonding, stop bonding for a period of time, would that increase or decrease the amount of payback that is given to the original cities?
Significantly decrease.
Yeah, if you look at our operations at UIA right now, and this is after bond payments are made, they're contributing about $10.7 million into projects and dividends and everything that's happening at Utopia and UIA right now. Obviously, when we started UIA, they were contributing zero. I mean, is one way to look at it. And if you look at our revenue growth at UIA alone, it's definitely, I think this year we're on pace to get between $6 and $7 million additional revenue. Now there are some increased bond payments of about $4 million coming on, but I mean we're still netting $2 or $3 million of additional revenue per year coming in for fiscal year 2024.
Thanks.
Now, when we first looked at the idea of adding cities, it was largely motivated in order to create a revenue source that could be used to pay some of the original debt. I mean, we were thinking it was optimistic just to be able to finish those original cities and not have operating shortfalls and things like that. But the fact that we're in a position of covering all of our operating expenses and contributing to the original debt is only because of those city partnerships.
As far as the rate increase, for my opinion, I think that's probably something that we should be considering even in future years. Hearing a few comments that we're not keeping up with inflation is concerning. And I guess from the standpoint of, in my opinion, essentially we're subsidizing these member cities residents, and so at some point that scale needs to tip, and we need to have them paying more of this service so that we can pay back the cities. And so is that incorrect?
Adam, I would actually say that probably is incorrect, and the main reason is a lot of what's driving this is how the bond rating agencies look at our organizations, and they want a certain ratio of operating revenue to total debt. And what we've done is we've built up our operating revenues as fast as we can, but we've done it with 3 years of capitalized interest on most of these deals. So we're not paying down our debt. There will come a time, we're just now starting to see big debt increases for fiscal year 23, 24, 25, and 26 are when our big debt increases have come on. As those come on, we will be repaying principal on the debt at a faster and faster rate. And as we pay at a faster and faster rate, the ratio that our current bond rating agency looks at will start to go down quicker. And frankly, sometime around fiscal year 27, 28, somewhere in there, we're going to see we're going to see how the bond rating agency looks at us change significantly. In addition, we're having more and more revenue available coming from operations to go towards our connections every year. So really kind of what we're looking at is a timing issue until we start paying down our debt, in my opinion, is part of the issue that we're having right now.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It does. I guess even so, it's concerning that we haven't increased any rates in potentially 12 years. And that if we continue on that mindset of let's hold this rate or let's stay so low that we can outbid any competitor, a great aspect to the Utopia model, but at some point that's going to catch up with us. And we experienced that similarly in our utilities, where councils for decades had said, hey, let's not increase rates, let's push this down the road. And I think a lot of cities have experienced that, where that thinking has caught up with us. And now we're having to increase annually just to keep up with inflation costs. And so I'm throwing that out as maybe a board topic of discussion that maybe isn't necessary today, but I think it's something that's prudent for us to consider in the future.
I think that's fair, Adam.
Okay. I don't think we should be afraid of doing rate increases, especially where we feel like we're still in a competitive space. But there's that balance of if we were 10,000 or so let's say $10 less expensive, would we have more customers? And what do the revenues look like for those additional customers? And it's a lot of crystal ball, guessing of what price tier or price for services affects in our ability to get new customers. We don't know perfectly, but we do a lot of analysis on that. Again, this is one that we've looked at quite a bit of what would $4 do, and I think we're comfortable that we'd see a negligible impact. But we don't want to push it too much upward. We also don't want to push it too much, to your point, Adam, downward of, subsidizing this unnecessarily, or, we want to pay our own bills and pay our own way with our revenues, and not just leave money on the table that should be going towards supporting the service. But we're well within that range. I think, it works right now. If it's a $4 rate increase, we'll look at this continually in the future of maintaining competitiveness, but also, trying to maximize our ability to pay our debts and also increase our ability to pay the original Utopia bonds.
Roger and Jason, this is Alex. Were there similar good questions as we've had here in our meeting, in the UIA board meeting this morning about the rates and the structure and impacts?
Yep. Yeah, it was a very similar conversation.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Doug and Adam have talked about, I think it's maybe at some point down the road, it'd be interesting if there hasn't been an analysis, kind of a detailed financial analysis, trying to take into consideration all of the pro and con factors, the market and competition, et cetera, inflation, and maybe take time in a upcoming board meeting at both UIA and Utopia just to walk through that, not so much to determine whether it's right or wrong, but to understand all of the different factors that are tied into this consideration, and what's the proper balance, and if not to get direction from the board, obviously to have us be educated about the issues that are at play there, and the doubt and the impact of adjusting one or another in one way or another, if that makes sense. Just so there's understanding, we can communicate that. So,
Roger, this is DJ from Brigham City. I just got to thinking, in developments, we usually have the developer pays for the water and power that's going in there. Would there be a problem or anything with having the developer put the infrastructure in for Utopia?
We get in trouble where we require it. I know it happens here and there where developers will put stuff in and let us use it. But we get in trouble when we try to require that specifically for Utopia. We get challenges from Comcast, CenturyLink about fairness and that, and then to require a developer to put in multiple competing infrastructures gets really hairy. So we've largely left it alone and just tried to do our best to coordinate that with developers. But yeah, I wouldn't mind the idea of requiring developers to put it in and then deed it to us, or even have them pay, a sort of impact fee or something like that. But because it's in a competitive space and it's actually heavily regulated, there's a lot of laws federally even that restrict what we can and can't do related to telecom services. We've kind of had to fall back away from that.
Okay, any additional questions on revenues? If not, there was one revenue and expense that I didn't bring up, and that's kind of new on this chart. Here's a chart, just kind of a pie breakdown of what our proposed expenditures look like. If you look there in green, 26% of our expenses for the year are expected to be construction management, and that's our management of the constructing the network in Bountiful. We are projecting revenue to offset this, and that's going to be coming in. In fact, it's going to be more revenue than it is expense, but that's something that we do need to bring up there. Other than that, as you can see, debt service is about 27% of our expenses for the year. Salaries and benefits, 25%. Those are our three biggest areas, the three that I mentioned. If you look at fiscal year 2024 debt service, it's 15.9 million, and that should say fiscal year 2025 debt service is 16.2. It's going up $313,500. That's just how the bonds were set up. and yet we see similar increases every year. I do have a slide that shows this later on, but we are projecting an increased payment to the cities to offset the debt that they paid of that amount, the 313,500. Compensation from UIA. UIA pays various fees to Utopia. One of the fees that they pay is a management fee. The management fee, this one's interesting. This one's primarily related to cost at Utopia, and it's kind of like an overhead charge that comes for some of the accounting and management and some of the other things that they get from UIA, but that amount is increasing this year by about 12%.
Hey, Jason,
Yeah,
is there a written policy or where is it spelled out how much goes from UIA to Utopia?
there's policies on the monthly fees for customers. Everything else, it ends up being a calculation of we do an estimation of every single department and how much of their time is spent on UIA issues. And that is looked at by the auditor every year. The auditor checks out our calculation and I guess they look at it and say, is it reasonable? Possibly. But there is not a set policy on that, as far as I'm aware.
So it's really more of a cost of service analysis that is done, and then based on how much time is spent, that amount is transferred over to Utopia. Is that what I understood?
That is what you understood. Yeah, it's similar to an overhead charge you may have between your general fund and your utility funds at times and stuff like that.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
And historically, all new growth was at UIA, and Utopia had kind of stopped, other than just operating. But some of these newer partnerships, like with Idaho Falls, Bozeman, and Bountiful, are suddenly new, burdens, but also revenue opportunities for Utopia. So things are actually trending a little bit differently this last year, and looking forward, that Utopia will actually have more revenue coming in as a result of those partnerships.
Operating expenses. Let's see here. I didn't include any of the Bountiful construction costs in this graph because it would make all these numbers look just really small and insignificant if I did. So I didn't want to let that muddy the water at all. This graph shows relative increases in 3 categories of Utopia operating expenses. The decrease from actual administrative cost in fiscal year 2023 to 2024, it's primarily due to, we've been seeing the last couple of years a lot of inventory purchases where we have inventory on hand, which we will sell to either Idaho Falls or Yellowstone Fiber to facilitate the construction of their network. We pass these through at cost. We don't make a profit on these because we're not allowed to do so, but these sales have been significant, and they have affect what we actually have coming through the budget for revenue and expense. We've seen some of this in year-end budget revisions the last couple of years. I don't budget for these on a go forward, and so that's why we have it. You can see that orange line there decreasing from 2023 to 2024. The proposed increase in operating expenses for fiscal year 2025 is 1.2 million, looking at comparing the 2 budgets for 24 and 25. A lot of this is due to an increase in repair and maintenance costs, that we are seeing more repair and maintenance costs than we were in the prior year. And that's looking at the network. When you look at the network support costs there of 1.2 million, a lot of this is operating expenses. And it's also due to an increase in marketing costs to help us get a large increase in customers for Bountiful and Yellowstone Fiber. We are seeing an increase there that to get these started in these new markets, we do have an increase in marketing cost. Salaries and benefits are about 63% of these operating expenses. That's a 4% percentage decrease from the prior year, although the amount's obviously going up. Total salaries and benefits are budgeted to increase by $983,000. And I'll discuss this change in the following slides. The first thing I wanted to talk about is, I'm sure you guys are all seeing this in your cities. I know this because we've talked to you about it, and you guys have a lot of better ideas than I had on this, but there's an issue with tier 2 with the retirement plan from the state for tier 2 defined benefit retirement plans. Most of our employees are on this plan for tier 2 defined benefit. It was designed to require employers to contribute up to 10% of an employee's annual salary for a defined retirement benefit. And employers are required to contribute any amounts requested by URS in excess of the 10% of their pay. And a law was actually passed by the state of Utah prohibiting employers to pay contribution amounts in excess of 10% of their annual salary for all non-public safety employees. Until fiscal year 2025, no employee contributions have been requested by URS. And in fiscal year 2025, the URS has requested payment of 0.7% of annual salary for tier 2 defined benefit employees, and that would come out of their paychecks. I know you're all dealing with this in your cities, and we did get some responses from you whether this was going to be covered by the city or not. And the way that most cities were looking at possibly covering this was an increase in pay for employees who are tier 2 defined benefit employees. The budget we presented includes the 0.7% increase as an additional pay increase at a cost of $46,500 inside of Utopia. We would welcome any comments that you guys have, because you guys were having discussions as we were talking this, but any input would be welcome. Does anybody have any comments?
Yeah, Jason, this is Doug. So just so you know, Murray City is not going to pick this up, and we are going to require our employees to have to pay it as written in law. So, so that may not be what everybody else is doing or agrees with, but I'm coming from that perspective. My concern about picking it up this year in their salary is, what if it gets fixed next year? Are you going to then tell the employees, we're going to take away 0.7% of your salary? Because I believe, and we believe in Murray, that this was an oversight that's going to be corrected likely next year with legislation. So that's something I guess I would wonder, if you're going to give to just the tier 2s the 0.7% and then it gets corrected next year, are you going to adjust it back down? So that's my concern about doing it. It also, I just want to throw this out, that increasing their salary also increases the cost to Utopia for the benefits. So you got workers' comp, you've got all that other stuff that goes with it. So it's, I don't know if you've included those costs in the $46,000, but by increasing salary, you're also increasing other costs that need to be considered. So I'd like to hear what other board members are doing or have to say, but that's why I just think that the employees should pay it this year and then see what happens next year.
Yeah, we did have a lot of these discussions that you're bringing up, although we did not bring up the possible temporary nature when in the discussions, but everything else you discussed, we did see as problems. And I did include the 46,500 it includes all additional cost. But I'd welcome any other input.
This is Matt with Midvale. I was just going to say that I just agree with what Doug said, and I think that having the employees cover it for this year is the right approach.
And Jeff from Wareham, I think Doug makes a great point. you know, you take that step forward, it's hard to pull that back again. I think I would feel more comfortable waiting to see how things shake out over the next year or so.
Lyndon's city council met and discussed this last week, and we intend to do the similar proposal as what's been presented here. The state also did the same thing that was passed as part of legislation, so they increased those for state employees. In our mind, in the future, Doug, for your question, if needs be, we would look at market adjustments for wages and adjust market factors accordingly, just like we do every year with all of our salary studies. And so if it needs to come down because they've been overcompensated, if this is fixed in legislation, then we would adjust the pay range accordingly. So it doesn't change their immediate salary, but it might impact their pay range in the future. So.
So hearing some one way, some another way.
Yeah, we're in a strange spot, kind of in the middle, right, where we're trying to see what the cities are doing and do the same, but it was all over the place with cities. I don't know. Remember where they're at, Jason, as far as how many were doing this and how many were going to not cover it?
I actually have it on. Let me go to another slide.
Public safety.
These are the 7 cities who did respond to us. We have leaning towards paying 0.7% on one, not covering. And then 2 others that said not covering, but they do cover it for public safety. This is all the notes that I had. So we did have more say they weren't than leaning towards doing it. But we didn't hear from everybody either. So we did want to get everybody's thoughts on this issue. Which is pretty similar to what we're hearing in the conversation right now. It's more lean toward not doing it than doing it, but some did lean toward doing it. I will say, I think that adjusting the future raises based on that would be an easier way to do it. If there's a change where you're going to give somebody less.
So would it ultimately mean then that it comes down to a motion when we adopt the tentative budget?
Do you know, you could adopt the tentative budget and ask us to change it for the final budget. Probably be easier. But I mean, it's up to you. The tentative we can say it's in there and then you can change whatever you want for the final budget. But I probably will need official direction if we're going to change it.
Jason, my recommendation, and the board could consider it, is that we ought to leave this dollar amount in the budget, tentative budget for now. And then, I don't know that this will happen, but see if there's any additional clarity that comes between now and the adoption of the final budget. And the truth of it is, even if it's in the budget, it doesn't have to be spent if circumstances change. Layton's analysis has been similar to what Doug's talked about in terms of we're hearing that it'll probably get changed next year. One of the things that we understand, hopefully correctly, is that from the URS perspective, once the threshold has been established on the retirement percentage, applied to this higher amount, that cannot be decreased. So even if you drop their salaries back down, independent some other increase, you're still going to, your retirement contribution isn't going to drop down. So the market approach that has been talked about in future years is probably a better way to solve it than think we're going to give it paid in 1 year and then take it back the next year. But that might be a suggestion, is leave it in the budget, let it play itself out and see if I know there's some cities up here in the north end that are continuing to explore other workaround. I don't know that they're going to find any success in that, but some form of addressing the issue, but not creating headaches down the road. I don't know if the board has any thoughts on that.
So this is Robin Meekum from Centerville. We haven't came to a firm decision yet, but one of our options that we're kind of leaning for is to give a one-time bonus of that amount, so that if it is rectified the next year, it won't be, we won't be have already given a raise for it. So we're compensating our employees, but just for the 1 year with a bonus instead of raising their wages.
So
Any additional discussion from any of the board members?
Do you know offhand how many tier 2 employees does Utopia have?
do you know, I don't have the count in front of me, but when I was looking at it, I would say that somewhere around 65 to 75% of our employees are tier 2 defined benefit. I don't know if that's similar for everybody else, but I mean, we're pretty young here. There aren't a lot of tier 1 people. I will say that.
Jason,
So
I
have we
have
can
89 that are on tier 2. And of those 89,
We're going to be very close to the probably 70-75%. Just thinking about where I was, I think my numbers were pretty close.
of those 89, 71 are on the hybrid plan, which that's the one that this affects.
Yeah. And we have 112 employees. So yeah.
so have we considered doing a one-time bonus as opposed to doing a raise?
We had not. I would be willing to consider it.
Yeah, this one we're genuinely interested in what the cities are doing and trying to figure out what the right place to land is. I mean, it's not a huge swing financially for us either way, but we want to do what's right and similar to what cities are doing. So if cities are going the route of a bonus, or they're going the route of salary, or going the route of not doing this, that's where we want to land, but a little tricky.
I would say if we're wanting to talk about it when we have a bit more information, I could bring this back when we go to final budget approval. We already know how much the number is. When you do the final budget approval for the board budget, if you want to decide at that time whether it be in or not, you could just tell me, put it in and how to put it in, because the dollars are going to be basically the same. And I could put it in or take it out based off what you said.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I think it's good to leave it in for now. Things can change between now and when we adopt the final budget. So that would be the direction I'm leaning right now, even though I'm concerned about putting it in the budget. I'd like some additional time to see if anything changes when we present our budget to the city council. I just would like to vote consistently. I'm always conflicted when I vote for a higher benefit or for an interlocal entity than our city gives, right? That's always my conflict. Is my employees are saying, well, you're willing to give the Utopia employees a bigger cost of living adjustment than you're willing to give our own employees. And so anyway, probably more than you wanted to hear, but that's why I'm in favor. Let's just leave it in for now.
Okay. I will make sure that we talk about this again with the final budget. Then I will leave this slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate the input with all of that. As far as our proposed COLA and merit adjustment, what's currently in the budget, we did look at we had 7 cities respond to us on what they are doing. It looks like the proposed increases were somewhere between 2.4 and 5.5% for the different cities when you look at COLA and merit put together. Where we are in our budget right now would be a 3.25% COLA and a 1.25% merit is what we're looking at putting in the budget. So yeah, and like I said, that's what's currently in the budget. So any comments, feel free to break in anytime you guys want. But I'll continue to move on.
Jason, I think in Murray, we told you we were gonna do 3.5, but it looks like that's going down to 3.
Okay. I can make that change. I mean, and we try not to say who exactly said everything. But yeah. And maybe you're the 3 to 3.5. I don't remember off the top of my head.
And I would just make the comment like, well, from a political perspective, we're trying to fall in line with somewhere where the cities are at. And I'm sure you have some of these pressures, especially with public safety, of there's also a competitiveness nature and scarcity of resources for certain skill sets. And it is difficult for us to retain and attract people in the broadband industry. We're definitely on the lower end of the spectrum in our industry. So where we're not proposing something out of line with where cities are at, if we're even a little bit above average, we're still in a tough spot to remain competitive. So we feel like this is actually coming in at a conservative level at 4.5, even if it may not feel that way.
Hey, Jason, I have a question. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but is Utopia required to hold a public hearing for certain employees, like cities are now being required for department heads, appointed employees? Are you guys going to be required to do the same thing for your executive management people?
To hold a public hearing, do you know what, Doug? Maybe we should speak afterward about this. I'm not familiar with what we're talking about here. A public hearing specifically for executives or anything like that.
Well, just briefly, the legislature just passed a bill this year that said that in cities anyway, that we have to have a separate public hearing, separate from the budget, on any increase for certain employees. And they've specifically indicated what those employees are, department heads.
Oh, wow.
And so I just wondered if you guys had to do the same thing.
I'm at a
another homework item for us. Yeah, we'll look into that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm at the UGFOA conference right now. I will definitely ask everybody what's going on there and make sure if we have to cover something, it's covered for the final budget. But thank you very much for the heads up on that. I'm not sure why it wasn't on my radar screen.
Well, probably because you're not a municipality, but you
It
kind
could
of
be
are. You're an interlocal entity. I don't know if the law applies to them or not.
Yeah. I will definitely double check that and make sure that we are covered before we do the final budget revision. Thank you very much. Here's our salaries and benefits FTE count. We are requesting four new employees, 1 locate tech, and that just has to do with that's blue staking. We just, as we see our addresses go, we need to do more blue staking. And similarly, a telecommunication manager and a network engineer. Those 3 all relate to the volume of what we have out there and what we have to manage. 1 community advocate. Roger, you want to talk about the community advocate a little bit?
Yeah, so this is a marketing resource. We want to really dive into areas that we're getting lower take rates in. That'd be, focusing in on lower income areas. It's not so much we want to go in there and subsidize anything, but there are programs for subsidies for low income. There's communication obstacles often, but we just want to have a little stronger focus in some of the areas where we haven't done as well. And that's what that resource is. So we hope that person actually ends up paying for themselves several times by having some success in those areas. We've identified some strategies there that we think will be beneficial. Generally, as we step back and say, how much growth we've had over the last year, and to only be adding 4 positions in this budget is very conservative. But we've met with our teams and identified that, where we really need to be growing. It's pretty lean. Again, it's 60,000 customers and adding almost 10,000 of those last year. I would probably generally expect us to be needing more customer service folks and knock techs and field technicians and that. And yeah, we do have a locate tech here, but we're trying to keep things pretty efficient, and our teams are pretty confident they can take on the load that's increased over the last while, and obviously that helps us financially. Most of the increase of cost is not because we're growing and throwing a lot of people at this. It's just mostly inflationary or COLA type stuff, and it's just some of our external costs as well going up. But we're not growing very much this year in this proposed budget. I think it's pretty conservative, actually.
So that we don't belabor the point, would it be possible to send to the board members a spreadsheet showing not only for these new employees, but all employees, showing the salary and benefit costs associated with those employees, just so we can get a sense of, like, for example, I don't want to take the time to ask it, what are you paying for healthcare, all those kind of benefit kinds of things. Would that be, I don't know, is that an unreasonable request? For me, I'd like to just see that spreadsheet showing everybody's salary, what the loaded costs are, and then any description of any type of benefits that the employees get. Like, do you pay, how much do they pay of their health insurance? How much are there other benefits like education benefits or fitness benefits, just that kind of stuff, if Utopia gives any of those?
Yeah, I mean, whether you want to, formally, if you want to come in and meet with us, either way. We don't have a gym benefit. We got rid of that. I'm trying to think of other things.
Tuition.
We do tuition reimbursement. We've had very few use it. So
that's about it, other than
that, it's pretty standard, like PHP for our health insurance.
We pay 80%, they pay 20%.
You want to, I mean, I don't know if you guys can hear Krista.
So for our benefits, we pay 80% towards their medical premium and their dental premium. We do not pay anything towards their vision. That's all on their own. Any other benefits that we have, we do have a life insurance that we take out for each of our employees, 50,000 for each employee, 5,000 per spouse, 2,500 for each dependent. They do have an option to get voluntary insurance, but that's paid for by them. The only other real, of course, we have our retirement benefit that you guys are aware of through URS. We do put 0.5% that is paid for by Utopia into a 457 account for our employees. 0.5, not 5, but 0.5%. And then we also have the tuition reimbursement that we will do for employees. But yes, very rarely do we have, I mean, unfortunately, we try to encourage the growth in our employees, but we don't have a whole lot of people that jump on that with the tuition reimbursement. But that's about the summary of the benefits that we do provide for our employees.
Yeah, if you want to break down all positions and salary and benefits and all that other stuff, we're have to share that with board members individually. If you want it in other format, we could talk about that, I guess.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. What are you seeing what's your health increases this year?
I believe that what I put in for this year, I think we're projecting, Krista, you have that number, right? I know you gave it to me. Was it around 7%?
That was at the high end. And typically we've had very low increases. I think, did we actually we stayed flat last year.
We
We
stayed
have a-
flat last year. This year I am budgeting 4%, I think, and I think that's conservative.
Meaning you expect it to be less than that or
No, I expect it to be less than 7, but I expect it to only hit half the year's budget. I'm sorry. So I budgeted for the 7%.
So yeah, that's what they said would be their estimate. I mean, they don't know just yet, but that was their estimate of what the high end for us would be, was 7%.
Yeah. But we've had more medical expenses, my understanding, this year, and we had less last year, so we didn't even have an increase last year.
Yeah, I've got to check off. Are you going to have a quorum if I leave? This is Doug.
Yes, we'll be fine.
Okay, thanks, everyone. I'm supporting everything we're talking about. And I just wanted, before I go, I wanted to just say thanks to Jason and Roger. I have been asking for a couple of years that they produce a budget document that has this level of detail, and Jason has done that, and I appreciate that level of detail. I'm sorry, I don't mean to create more work for you, Jason, but it's really helpful for me as a board member to know some of those detail issues in the budget. So thanks for putting together that report.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Doug. And also, he's stealing a little bit of my thunder. I was going to tell everybody I don't have a final copy, but I have been working on the format of our budget to include some of this information, and then I will get that out to the board definitely by the end of next week, hopefully by the end of this week. We've been going through some iterations and trying to make it look like we want it to look, and it's taken a little bit of time, but that's something I was going to bring up at the end. With that being said, I'm going to continue on. The salary and benefit costs of these new full-time employees would be $297,000 a salary and $121,000 a benefit for $418,000. I'll continue to push through, but feel free to stop me once again anytime you want. And then fiscal year 2024 versus 25 city loan repayments. You'll remember before I showed you that your debt payments were going up by $313,500 on a previous slide. Here's how the proposed 25 distribution will look compared to the 24 distribution. And I will get a copy of this, now that I think about it, out to all the board members so they can pass this on to their finance people. Although a lot of your finance people have contacted me individually to say, hey, what sort of number should I put in? So. And that's all
sorry.
Go ahead.
So that increase is just representative of the percentage increase that we need to owe. So it's not reducing. It's let's see, how do I say that? So it won't seem like we're reducing the amount that we're paying in. It'll just, because this will just compensate for the increase that needs to be paid. I didn't say that right, but I hope that made sense.
Basically what it does is if you take the net of what was paid last year versus what's paid this year, they will be the same amount.
Yeah.
I will say it does mean that Utopia is paying back a higher percentage of your total payment though, because we're covering 100% of the increase. So yeah.
And I know a big part of this discussion today has been around the increase in the fees or the bonding in order to sort of address, among other things, this. I mean, I think it would be something that I would, from my perspective, I would like to find ways to increase how much is going back to the cities beyond just simply what the increase is that we have to pay. And I would be very interested to hear what potential strategies there might be for that to occur.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth. It's definitely long-term when you look at our goals, something we want to do. The biggest problem we're going to have the next 2 years is on UIA side, debt payments are going up by $4 million per year. So you have to, first off, we're going to have to increase our revenue by more than the $4 million per year just to make the debt payments. And that's for 25 and 26. But in 27 and 28, I think that those conversations get much easier depending on where we are in funding growth. But I think if you look at the midterm, that's definitely something that's on our radar screen and I think is possible. Maybe even short term, but definitely midterm.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Or any additional questions from any member of the board?
Just really quick, I don't need to spend a ton of time on this. On the budget document that you sent out, the travel and training for a lot of departments, just compared to a couple of fiscal years ago, has jumped up significantly. I'm just curious on why that may be. Fiscal year 21, we were just in the tens of thousands. Now we're in several departments significantly higher. So just curious.
Yeah, so we've found some value in doing our own lobbying, if that makes sense. Like having more people involved in the industry associations and even the events and things. We cut back on our lobbying expense, and then with Nicole doing some of our government affairs work internally, we're saving some money over here, but also wanted to make sure we funded the ability to participate in some of the work out there. So yeah, we've budgeted for an increase in that, but we do have an increased person who would be using the travel and that expense line, and also expect to increase some of it. I actually hope to do less of it personally.
Okay.
But there's a little bit of an offset there, I guess, is my point.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Good question. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. And the motion would need to include proposed adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2025, as well as the setting of a time and place for a public hearing regarding the adoption of that budget. And the proposed date for that hearing is June 10th of 2024.
I move to approve resolution 24-01 regarding the adoption of the tentative budget and the public hearing dates as described.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Is there a second?
DJ seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call.
DJ's and I.
Okay, Adam.
Aye.
Hey, Jason, can you drop off your screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I didn't want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Matt?
Yes.
Jeff, or Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Kobe?
Aye.
Jason Sant?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Looks like Derek, you're on.
Euler?
Yeah,
No,
You're-
he had to leave.
he's just alternate. Okay, thank you. Robin,
Aye.
Councilmember, thank you. And Mark Christensen.
Yes.
And then Leighton is an aye as well. Have I missed anybody? Okay, thank you. Appears to be unanimous. Next item is to set the date and a time for a public hearing to consider possible amendments to the current year budget, the fiscal year 2024 budget. Jason, do you have some information you'd like to present on that item?
I don't have any information, but I think I will have come June 22nd. I do know that there's at least one item that will have to come forward to Utopia, and that when we approved the bonds last year for UIA, we moved some money around to get some vehicle purchases inside of Utopia. So we're going to need a budget hearing in June.
Okay, very good. You'll notice that's the same date and time for the public hearing regarding the adoption of the new budget. So to make it simple. So I'd be happy to entertain a motion to to accommodate that, to set the date and time for the public hearing on the current year budget to June 10th of 2024.
This is DJ, so moved.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Matt Dahl,
Okay.
Midvale.
Thank you, Matt. Let's do a roll call again. Jason? Sant?
Yes.
Okay, Matt?
Yes.
Colby?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
And Mayor?
Aye.
Brigham City?
Aye.
Bob? Okay, thank you, Bob.
Yes.
Adam?
Aye.
Councilmember Robin?
Aye.
Mark Christensen?
Yes.
And Leighton is an aye as well. Did I miss anybody?
Mayor Anderson can vote on that one.
He should vote on that one.
No, she may not be on anymore.
I
Okay,
don't see her on.
thank you. Next item, item 5, is a resolution providing for the appointment of a new general counsel for Utopia. Roger?
Yep, as you may know, we hired Nicole Cottle a little while back. We're amazingly lucky to have her. She's amazing. But we hired her as our government affairs person, and we had a vacancy in our general counsel position. And so we're kind of combining those roles. And she's taking on both of those. She's very capable, and we're excited to have her take that role. But as a general counsel for the organization, we do need to have her formally recognized, or I guess what is it, to approve the appointment, or however it is in the packet, right? But she's amazing. I think a lot of you may have had the ability to work with her in the past in different roles, and if not, hopefully you'll get to interact with her here. But she's fully capable, and we're excited to have her take on that role. I don't know what else to bring up other than that she's awesome, and we any questions you have for her, or feel free to fire away.
Okay, are there any questions either to Nicole or in general from any board member? I would just second what Roger said. Nicole is remarkable. She has she's very bright, is a doer, very hard worker, thinks very strategically, and I've had the privilege, our city has had the privilege to interact with her and Wayne Pyle and West Valley City over the years, and have always been impressed with Nicole. She's a person of integrity and character, and as Roger says, a blessing to Utopia. And she has a nice side, but she can also be very tough and determined. She will represent whatever organization she's employed by very, very faithfully and loyally. So, Nicole, it's a privilege to have you part of Utopia.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? If not, be happy to entertain. Or Adam, did you have something?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, you just want me to quit talking so you can make a motion. Thank you.
Let's go. Yeah. This is a
Okay.
no-brainer, I hope. So
Yep. Go ahead.
yeah, I move to approve resolution 24-02 as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Agreed. DJ seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, let's just do a voice vote, if that's okay. All in favor of the approval of resolution 2402, which appoints Nicole Cottle as the general counsel for Utopia? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, very good. Thank you. Congratulations, Nicole.
Thank you.
Next item is a financial update. To the extent we need one, Jason?
I will be brief. Let me hurry and share my screen. Here's basically the quick financial update. If you look at our total revenues, they're going to come in very close to where we are budgeted for the year. We're a little bit under on some residential transport and commercial transport, but we're over on some access fees. And the miscellaneous operating revenue, that's a little bit of that is to cover negative fund balance. Sorry, I thought I was hearing somebody, but I guess not. As far as expenses, we're under on payroll from where we projected to be at this point in the year, and that's mainly because we've had open positions and because we filled some of our new positions slower than what we had anticipated we would in the budget. Network operating expense is projected to be higher than budgeted at year end. We are seeing more breaks this year and more problems with damage to the network than we had in the previous year. Part of this is because there is a lot of construction going on. Part of this is because we have more network. I mean, we added 4 new cities basically this year that we didn't have to worry about in prior years. But we are seeing some increased costs there. The M&S equipment for that's projected to be 489 high, it won't be that high. Most of that's to do with some vehicle purchases that we've done that we need to talk about in the year-end budget revision there. That's what we're looking at there. The two biggest issues that I see to bring up are just Bountiful construction management and the Bountiful project. What we're spending, we're spending money quicker than we're bringing it in, but Roger and I are addressing this and hope to have this addressed prior to year end. We are not aware of any construction overages on the project, and we think everything's going good there. We're just got some timing issues. I did hear that we have more crews working in Bountiful now, so we do expect those costs and those revenues to start increasing at a higher rate. Any questions on the financial update? If not, I'll move forward to the charts. Just another thing, 10-year, our recurring revenue is still looking good. We had a slight dip in February, and that's because January had a very big increase in some one-time connection revenue that didn't happen again in February, but still overall, our overall revenues are increasing as we projected. And if you look at in UIA, this is more FYI for Utopia, but we're now at the point that we have over $1 million more coming in every month than we need to make the bond payment. And that's a very, very good thing. And that's what allows us to do all the stuff we've been talking about, going through the budget and do everything that we've been doing. So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Are there any members of the board who have a question for Jason regarding his presentation? Okay, thank you. We'll move on then to the network update. Roger?
Okay, I know we're over time, so I'll keep this brief, but I just want to point out, I'm going to send out a revised version. We had some formula errors that missed some of the newer cities in our calculations, so numbers are slightly better than what we've recorded, but only by tens, or maybe 100 or so. But anyways, subscriber growth is great across the board in all of our cities. Take rates are strong. If they're not increasing, it's usually because of new developments that haven't had helms and potential customers put on them. But the details there for anyone to look at their specific city and how their subscriber growth has been. And that's, like I said, it's been very good across the board. We do have some reason to believe we'll have some benefit in new products. We have a 2.5 gig tier that's being released. We just made that available to our service providers. So we'll have a new option for customers, and also a reduction in the cost for the 10 gig tier, which was kind of priced intentionally to be high to not overwhelm us. But now that we have better equipment and lower costs for doing 10 gig installations, we're pricing that down appropriately, and we do make more money on those. And so that'll be a good offering to have a more competitive 10 gig option on the network. But yeah, things are good. We continue to take a market share away from incumbent providers and give our residents and businesses better prices and more options with our service provider partners than they would have otherwise with the incumbents. And it's all looking good. So anyways, just end quickly since we're over time. So.
Okay,
Any questions?
Yeah. Any questions from the board? Okay, very good. Any other items that any board member would like to discuss that haven't been raised on the agenda? Informational items. Okay, Well, thank you again for your time today and for all that you do to individually to support Utopia and help it to be successful, and also all that your individual cities do through the years. There's been highs and lows with this organization, but it's great to be involved with good people who are committed to the success of the organization. So that hasn't happened by accident. There's been a lot of hard work and effort and in the open and behind the scenes. So I want to express appreciation to each one of you, and especially the elected officials, for your support of the organization and the promotion of its vision. So it's certainly benefiting the state and our individual communities. So all the best to you, and have a great rest of the day. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Okay, thank you.